The 2024 season has finally come to an end. Joe and I are going to briefly touch on the things that happened in this athletic series and then talk about the 2024 team as a whole, what went wrong for this team and where this team could have improved. And then we'll wrap it all up by talking about the comments made by Jerry Dipoto talking about the 2025 season. Thank you guys so much for watching the final episode of the Hit It Here podcast this season, the episode 126 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav network, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Be sure to give us a 5-star review. And this is the you guys episode, just all of you. We appreciate you guys coming along with us on this ride for the 2024 season and many more seasons to come. But Joe, how are we feeling about today's episode?
Ultimately, and just objectively, I am feeling better, I think, than you are in your current state. I know it was a hard season, I think, for everybody, right? Coming up one game short, having a 10-game lead, all that stuff in general. But I didn't think this season would actually kill you. Like, this is insane. You're literally a skeleton. But if you guys thought that maybe this season would ultimately be the demise of Colton, you might have placed a bet on it with Bet Online. Thank you to BetOnline for being a sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And yes, I know baseball season only got about 2 weeks left, but guys, the football NFL regular season, it's in full swing. And if you think you know your stuff, get in on the $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Oh my God, Colton, you're alive! Just like the Seattle Mariners were in their final series against the Oakland Athletics, the final series they'll be playing as the Oakland Athletics, a 3-game sweep at home to finish off a season that you wish a little bit more happened, for the better of the team. They're 1 game out. A bunch of people are talking about that 1 game against Kansas City where listen. Everyone's already talked about it. We don't need to talk about it. We know that's the game. That's the game. A lot of times there's like, oh, like you look back at whatever. That's the game. There's not a bunch. I mean, there is. But like, if you want to pick one, that's the one that put the nail in the coffin. All right. But there's some positives from this athletic series. A walk-off for Justin Turner in the second game. Very cool. Very fun. Very exciting. The final game on Sunday, Cal Raleigh. I mean, he homered in every single game in this series.
Oh, he did. I didn't even realize that.
He did, and he needed to pass Mike Piazza for the most home runs by a catcher in the first 4 seasons of their MLB career. He did that. He owns the record now. Will it ever be passed? Maybe. But yeah, Alvin Davis as well. Most home runs by a Seattle Mariner in their first 4 years as well. So good for Cal Raleigh. Great season for him in general. Got to 100 RBI as well. I said it on stream, but he was a top 15 position player by F4 in 2024. A great season all around. From game 1 to game 162. Cal's been that guy. He has been the backbone. The guy that's been the backbone of the pitching staff, Logan Gilbert, had a phenomenal final start. Going his 33rd start, he finishes the season leading the league in innings pitched. Not league, sorry, all of MLB, right? Not just the American League. Does whatever. Still, a feat that should not go unnoticed. Logan was a workhorse, carried a perfect game into 5 2/3, I believe, in that final start as well. Colton, you were there. Anything you want to touch on from, I guess you also went to the first game, any of these 3 games against the Athletics to finish out the Mariners 2024 season?
No, I mean, it's just fitting, right, that they ended up sweeping this series because that's exactly what the Mariners needed to do to have any semblance of hope at the playoffs. Of course, we knew going into the first game of the Athletic series that they were already knocked out because both the Royals and the Tigers had already won games on Wednesday and Thursday, and that knocked the Mariners effectively out of the playoffs. But yeah, the Mariners, I mean, they had to win out, and by golly, Joe, they did. And they just didn't get the help they needed. And I think that because of, what this series meant to Oakland Athletics fans, I think it was really cool, by the way. The Athletics fans showed up. And after the final game of the series, the last game of the season, bro, there was everybody was leaving. I always stay a little bit longer because I like to take in the ballpark the best I can. But there was just a group of Athletics fans and they weren't leaving. They were all chanting thank you, Oakland, and stuff like that behind the dugout. People were crying. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just like I can't imagine what they're going through right now. I mean, the emotions that I feel on like a final game of the season has to be multiplied by 10 at least for the fans. They're literally losing their baseball team because billionaires are too greedy. Um, so that is highly unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, the overall Logan looked great. He didn't have to go out there today. Logan lobbied to go out there and make his final start of the year. Because obviously they went Emerson Hancock in game 2.
Yep.
Brian Wu made his start in game 1. There were a lot of talks that it could be Jonathan Diaz pitching game 3. But Logan said, no, I want to go out there. I want to make my normal start. I want to finish this season, the best season of his career, obviously. You know, he wanted to finish it strong, and he did too. 5 2/3 innings of one hit ball. And it just kind of really encapsulates the full season for Logan Gilbert, which I think is something that, as we look back on this season, there are plenty of positives. Obviously, the big glaring negative is the fact the Mariners missed the playoffs, Joe. And I talked about this a little bit on stream, and I've talked about it before, but this season can really be sliced into 3 parts. That is the first part of the season, where they are 10 games above the Houston Astros. That's one part. The part after that is basically from like June or something on, where they all of a sudden lost that 10-game lead in record time, or all of a sudden chasing the Astros. And then the third part is the hiring of Dan Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like that last like 30 games or whatever it is. And we talked about it on stream, so I don't want to dive too much into it here, Joe. But when you look at this Mariners season, I guess, what is like the one thing that that really sticks out to you about 2024?
That people are wrong. People are allowed to have wrong opinions and wrong like ideas about what works and what doesn't. Admittedly, I was very much so on I think Scott's fine. I don't think the hitting coaches stuff will really be that impactful. And hello, transparency, very wrong. The last 30 games showed us that a dramatic change in coaching staff and coaching philosophy can have a positive impact. It's not that I really thought that like there wasn't the possibility of it, but like I didn't really, I guess, fully flesh out like who I thought could really bring about that change. Was Dan Wilson at the top of my list? No, but hey, he's the man for 2025 going on, because they've already kind of basically just said that, but he did his job in 2024. I think he brought out a lot of the best out of his players that, you know, he had to take over for in a pretty grim situation where your odds are growing slimmer and slimmer every single game that you play. And he got that team to the finish line, unfortunately, just a bit short. And is that his fault? No. Is that Scott Service and Jarrett DeHart's fault? A little bit. I look at the hiring of Brant Brown in the offseason, something that we applauded and said, like, yeah, Brant Brown, great hitting philosophy, like, should work out. Turns out, wrong. Apparently, dude's a psycho when it comes to hitting philosophy. Bro's just a little too crazy Rama. And Julio didn't vibe, right? And then it's like Jarrett DeHart having to pick up the pieces and just really couldn't. And it took a literal dramatic rug pull of that like remaining coaching staff essentially on the offensive side to, okay, now they can figure it out. And you look at the breakdown of the splits by month of their season offensively, and you can see when the change happens. And again, I was wrong, you know, that whole situation, like I was wrong about that whole situation. And I kind of said it too, when talks about like, you know, firing Service, blah, blah, blah. I was always on the side of, if they did do the coaching change, so long as they come out better on the other side, I'm all for it, because the ultimate goal for me as a fan is that the team plays good baseball and they win baseball games. If they were better for it on the other side, I was going to be for it no matter what. It could have been my least favorite manager hired ever. I don't know who that name would be, but like for the example of Joe Madden, like people were like, I mean, it's like the lobbying name all the time. And if it was Joe Madden that got brought in and then got this team to where, you know, similarly that Dan Wilson did, like I would have been like, yeah, great, good for him. He did his job. I was wrong. And I think looking at like, you're talking about breaking apart into 3 seasons, like up to June 18th, then to the end of August is the second part. And then it's a quick third act, but we always kind of knew that it was going to be that way with how the season kind of played out. I look back at like the first bit and we felt like indestructible, even with like a very, very inferior offense a broken offense, a team that just simply could not score runs and was just hanging on by the threads of their pitching staff. You look at the middle part of the season where it all falls apart, and you look at the end where the offensive players are doing their job, and the pitching staff doesn't have to be perfect. There's not that pressure of being perfect night in and night out. And there were times that they were, and they even still lost games. Like you look at the Yankees game where Julio gets thrown out at third on the random bat throw thing. Like that was a game where you pitched pretty much damn near perfectly, and you have to shrug it off because, well, they lost that game. And situations like that are going to happen. It's just you have to minimize them, and I think they did in that final third. But you look back to the middle part of the season, and they definitely did not minimize those losing opportunities because they were the second worst team in baseball behind or ahead, just ahead of the Chicago White Sox during that stretch. So I'm just going to say I was wrong. Congratulations to the people that were right. You can throw tomatoes at me.
Ooh. Can I do that? Even though I was also wrong, I said the same things you did. Can I do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Can we just throw tomatoes at each other?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
It's like dodgeball, but tomatoes.
With tomatoes. If
Yeah.
you can dodge a tomato, you can dodge a ball.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that the way that I look at 2024, like, right, this is a season of missed opportunity. This is a season where the Mariners pitching staff, the rotation specifically, best in team history, one of the best, honestly, in baseball history. Like what we have seen out of this team is incredible from the pitching side of things. And for the offense, it's like I personally never thought that we would see literally career worst years out of Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, and Julio Rodriguez. Like I didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was in a year where we were told that they were trying to cut down on strikeouts and they like set the record or something like that for the team or something weird. It seemed so improbable that if you were to go back and tell me back in February that this is where we would be at the end of the season, I wouldn't have believed you.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my opinion, adding Jorge Polanco was legitimately the best second baseman you could have added. And it didn't work. If you would have told me that adding Mitch Garver, a guy who's been a fantastic DH, a guy who just helped lead the Rangers to the World Series and win it, was going to be your worst hitter, I wouldn't have believed you because he's never been that guy before. Like if you would have told me that JP Crawford was going to hit under 200 and be a liability in your offense, I wouldn't have believed you. Like if you would have told me that the bullpen was going to be honestly pretty mid, I wouldn't have believed you. And I think that all those things plus a pitching staff that, like I said, was pretty much perfect. Like you could not have asked for more out of your starting rotation this year. You couldn't. I look back at guys like George had a bit of a rough year. He did not take for his standard. But Bryce Miller and Brian Wu took major steps forward. There are certainly positives to take away from this season. But the ultimate goal should be winning the World Series, and unfortunately, the Mariners didn't even make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we sit here on the 29th of September, and we have to talk about the season being over. And the Houston Astros going to the playoffs again in a spot that, frankly, the Mariners had, and they have nobody to blame but themselves. It's a failure from the top down. Ownership's to blame, front office to blame, the players are to blame, and to a very, very minute, like small portion, like you and I might be to blame.
Sure.
You know, we overhyped this team. We did. And not because, you know, we're trying to sell tickets or be bootlickers. I honestly believed in this team.
Yeah, it's just general excitement about like being, you know, I don't want to say like positive because I don't want to say that like people that maybe didn't have the same ideology about the team were being negative, but like we're optimistic. We saw the vision and we kind of maybe drank the Kool-Aid a little bit too much. Maybe we had too many glasses of the Kool-Aid. But you mentioned, Colton, how good the pitching staff was. So I've got like just Fangraphs leaders by pitching F4 pulled up. All 5 of the main starting pitchers for the Mariners are in the top 55 of all of baseball. So every 11 pitchers, you're getting a Seattle Mariners starting pitcher. Brian Wu comes in at 54th at 2.3 WAR. So obviously if he's made more starts and been healthier, could be higher, but you got Luis Castillo that at 51st, also at 2.3. Bryce Miller at 42nd with 2.8. Again, a great year out of Bryce Miller. You think about that last, like the start against Houston, where he just like put it all on the table, left it all out there. And that's a great way for his season to kind of wrap up there. And you've got then Logan Gilbert at 12th with 4.1. And Fangraphs just loves to promote George Kirby propaganda. The most valuable Mariners pitcher by F4 in 2024 was George Kirby with 4.2. Don't know how he did it. I don't know what the algorithm is for calculation of F4, but beats Logan Gilbert by 0.1. I think everyone will agree across the board that Logan Gilbert was your best pitcher in 2024 from the starting pitching considered. I mean, maybe just in general, if you want to like lump it, like compare how the bullpen pitched to how the rotation pitched, like is Logan Gilbert your best pitcher in 2024? I think a lot of people would say that. And talking about missed opportunities, you look at Logan Gilbert's record, 9-12. Sure, pitchers win losses don't really matter that much, but a guy that goes 208 innings, makes all 33 starts, pitches to a 3.23 ERA, strikes out over 200 batters, has a record of 9-12, should tell you exactly where the team success kind of was at fault, and it's on the offense. The Mariners led the league in quality starts. I think they finished with 92. The MLB league average is 58. It's not to say that like quality starts are everything. Two teams that are like the bottom like third, or like I think the bottom like 3, the Guardians and the Brewers, are in the playoffs. The Mariners aren't, and they are not even close in terms of comparing what quality starts are, like how they're measured. But again, it's not like the end all be all. But like calling this season the season of missed opportunities, I think you hit the nail on the head.
It's one where it feels like we're going backwards, and people are upset, rightfully so. People should be upset with where this team ended this season, because going into 2024, like I was talking to Lyle Goldstein of the Marine Layer podcast today at the Mariners game, and you know he said to me, all the momentum from 2022 is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had 2022, you were knocked into playoffs, everyone felt good. And going into 23, you had the All-Star game there that year. Like you had, the moment again, the feeling of 2022 finally making the playoffs, a team that you thought was going to be able to make it back to the playoffs and ended up just a game short. People were pissed, like when the Mariners missed the playoffs, but it seemed like once the offseason really started rolling, so starting with the Mitch Garver edition, people started to be very okay with this team moving forward. And it seemed like they were still like, okay, we missed by a game in 23 or 22 or 23. They went out and they made the additions necessary to make sure that doesn't happen this year. And we were all feeling pretty good about going into 24. I'd say for the most part, the vast majority. There are plenty of people that were not happy with the additions made because the Mariners didn't sign like Ohtani or anything.
Sure.
But now, as we sit here at the end of the season, we like all of it's gone. There's no faith anymore that this team is going to make the right moves. And it sucks. It really does. And again, this starts with ownership. Chris Larson and John Stanton, you guys can suck it. Like, plain and simple. This is your fault. And I think Lyle really made a good point there, saying it's all gone, because it truly does feel that way. Like, there was supposed to be, what was the timeline? It was like 2021, like, that's when our contention window was going to start. Then it got pushed back a little bit because of COVID, but then 2021, they won 90 games. Mm-hmm. Almost made it to the playoffs. We're like, oh, maybe the window is open. And then 2022, they made the playoffs. They're like, oh, the window's wide open. And then 2023, it's like, okay, like, you guys tripped getting to the window. Sorry. And then 2024, they're not even in the same room as the window anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, when it comes to 2025, the Mariners have to go out there and make the additions necessary, and they need to be bona fide additions. And that is a comment that Jerry Dipoto did make, Joe, in an article that he that was written by, who was it, Jude? Adam Jude wrote that article?
The one I was referencing before this?
Yeah.
This one is by Daniel Kramer that was posted today. But Jude and Divish, like, they had a little end of the year presser in the dugout kind of a situation on, I believe, was Saturday, and a lot of comments from Dipoto came from that. And I believe Jude had an article on the maybe it was a one that Divish and Jude both had worked on for the Seattle Times, but the quote I had said to you before we started recording was from a Daniel Kramer article that has you feeling some kind of way. Would you like to start with the stuff from Saturday first?
Yeah, let's start with the stuff from Saturday, and then we can talk about the article from today because
It's a little not like it's all kind of encompassing the same idea as water bottle moment. For those listening, Colton drank from his water bottle. Audio
the
listeners
audio
are
portion never knows what's happening, dude.
The audio people are confused. Anyways, so a couple tweets I'm just gonna read from Divish's feed. This was on September 28th. Jerry Dipoto talked with media pregame. He said that trading pitchers from the rotation would be Plan Z. They have no intention of doing that. This kind of aligns, I think, with how they felt coming out of the 2023 into the 2024 season, like that offseason, how they were very hell-bent on not wanting to trade Woo or Miller, and they're glad that nothing materialized because they liked how they were feeling with the pitching going into 2024. This to me kind of lines up in that same vein, right? They are not wanting to do that, but he's not completely, I guess, like shutting down the idea. Sure, they have no intention of doing that. That's not no. Like the Lloyd, you're telling me there's a chance gif creeps into my mind. I don't think they will. I think we've talked about it a decent amount. The most likely outcome, I think, would be trading Luis Castillo because of the money owed and where the development is at for all of your 4 other pitchers, Gilbert, Kirby, Woo, Miller, as far as where their trajectory is heading. Castillo's probably plateaued, and people probably know that. So what you could get in a return package there, like maybe it's not as lucrative, so maybe they'll hold on to him and ensure that they've got their pitching rotation as stacked up as they want it to be going into 2025 and fill out things elsewhere. And this kind of goes along with the next comment where it says, Dipoto doesn't believe the team will have to create payroll flexibility. He acknowledged that the payroll will go up significantly with in-house players, but also said it will go up beyond those expected raises. Colton, he also said this last offseason, and it went up by like 1 point something.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, again, we're in wait and see mode of like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, as far as like really taking that payroll and increasing it beyond the means of in-house stuff, because I'll let you kind of break down those players that are going to be going into arbitration, because you talked about it on stream of like guys that will be getting paid a decent amount more next year. You don't have to have the figures, but like, you know, the names. They're like the household guys on this team.
Yeah. So notably, Julio Rodriguez is going to be making $20 million next year. I believe that's up from him making like 11 or something like that in 2024. But guys like Randy Rosarena is going to arbitration. Who knows what he'll make next year? Logan and George are going to be in arbitration. Cal's going to be in arbitration this coming year. Like, and Cal specifically, he's going to get paid, and it's only going to go up from there. Like, he's going to usually where you're at in ARB1 really sets the tone for where you're going to be at the rest of the way with arbitration. And Cal, I would be like, I don't know what the number will be, but I would assume it'd be anywhere. I think it'll be over like 6.
Yeah, I think it's higher than what Logan got, I would say.
Yeah.
Pretty easily with like how Cal has performed. He's probably looking at around 6. Logan's probably looking at around, he's probably in the double digits now. Randy will get double digits as well. I think Cal and Kirby, like, George might make like 1 more. Like, he might get 7, Cal might get 6. Right? Like, I think that's kind of probably where the money kind of figures out there, but
yeah, I think that the comment inherently is fine. Like, it's true. These guys are going to make more money, but like the payroll is going to go up because of these guys in arbitration. Adding more payroll to that as well is going to be important here, because you are probably going to lose $12 million when you decline Polo's option. Depending on what you do with Mitch Haniger, I mean, there's money there to play with. So I don't necessarily, when they say creating payroll flexibility, I'm assuming that means like they're not going to make like the Geno trade.
Yeah, or the Kelenic trade, yeah.
Or the Kelenic trade. And I think that because of that, that's a good thing. I want to talk a little bit about trading the starting pitchers, because yeah, I think that's a good thing. I don't think they should trade one of their starting pitchers, because frankly, you have a core set up with your starting staff, and there's also a lot of good starters out there on the market this year in free agency. So it's like, unless something walks through your door that you cannot turn down, I say don't trade a starting pitcher. You need these guys next year. They were the only thing that kept you afloat this year. And while yes, the offense needs to be better, and also, is there really a way to go out there and acquire the offensive pieces you need without trading a starting pitcher? I don't know. I'm not sure, because that your best trade chips are your starters. Like, full stop. You're not going to get the same amount for Logan Evans and Brandon Garcia as you are for Bryce Miller. You're not. And so how do the Mariners go out there and add meaningfully to this roster moving forward? I'm not really sure what that looks like, but I do believe that keeping the starting pitchers, unless you are absolutely blown away, is the right move.
There's another move that people might say almost as integral as keeping the starting pitchers intact, but it's not on the player side. The coaching staff, Colton, Edgar Martinez, seems like he's had a pretty big impact. Lots of praise from the players. Obviously, the numbers show in this last month they were hitting. The Mariners, somehow the Mariners were hitting the baseball, okay? And some of the comments made from Dipoto were not fully inspiring about Edgar's full role with the team, how he's been the last 30 days, like, traveling, being with the team every day. It's more of a comment about how much will we actually see Edgar with the team in 2025. And they do have intentions of trying to keep him with the team, but the quote here is from Judas. As noted, Mariners are hoping to have Edgar Martinez back next season in some capacity, and Dipoto says Ems will be creative to make it work for Edgar. We've seen Edgar in or around this ball club for what? 5
a decade,
10 years, right? Where it's like he's been there, he's been around, but like his presence wasn't as, I guess, like palpable as it has been in the last 30 days, aside from when he was the hitting coach from 2015 to 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But even then, after he left, he was still kind of hanging around the team. Like he was still like there not like taking batting practice, but like being there with the team during batting practice, etc. Right. My thoughts on that are he is the home hitting coach. He will just be there the 81 games, essentially. And maybe you hire a second hitting coach in the offseason to be the guy that travels with you on the road. Hire a hitting protege, right? Have someone that just Edgar will pour all of his thoughts into. Doesn't matter who, but someone that will just be a sponge. And then you can travel with that person on the road, and Edgar gets to stay in Seattle, which is likely what is the hang up, because there are moments like when he originally left, the issue was like, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to have the time commitment. But Edgar's talked about it this last couple, like the last month. He really enjoyed it. He really enjoyed his time. And Julio, I think, is the main one that you want to have Edgar be around, because Julio really appreciates what Edgar's done. And if you can get that for 81 games and then have him just pour all of his knowledge into someone else, and then that person travels for the away games, I think that's fine. It doesn't even have to be all 81. It can be like 65. But like if he's there in the dugout for the majority of the home games, I'd say that I would consider that a win as far as like getting Edgar to stay with the team. And sure, it could be a full bona fide hitting coach role. Like he could still be traveling with the team. But like if they're trying to get creative and make it accommodating for Edgar, that's where my head's at with it.
I think that what he needs is he just needs, like you said, a protege, an assistant. They literally need a hitting coach assistant that just like has a little notebook with everything Edgar's ever said.
Write that
literally
down.
Just like write that down. And I think that there's still a possibility that like maybe if he is the home guy or whatever, he still does go on like important road trips. Like let's say the Mariners have a big road trip against the Astros and the Rangers.
Yeah.
Like then he's like, okay, like Edgar, we need you with us. Like, and he's like, cool, I'll come with you. Like again, he only had to do it for like a month this year. But if that's something he doesn't want to do, I'm sure there are ways. I don't necessarily know what the rules are for Major League Baseball on who can be in the dugout and who can't. But if Edgar is allowed to basically do that, I think that the Mariners should 100% try to make it work, because it's and like you said, we were wrong. Changing the hitting coach did matter. Like it did. And obviously, as long as Edgar sticks around next year, we'll be able to see it in a longer term thing than just 30 games. To see like 30 games, small sample size, but nonetheless, it's clearly there was a difference. And so if next year Edgar does want to stay the hitting coach, I think that the Mariners will give him basically whatever he wants. It's Edgar freaking Martinez after all. And yeah, I think that is, if you're the Mariners, you have to try to get that guy to come back, because it is very clear what he did for your ball club.
This is kind of like leading into the quote from today, but the final one on the 28th from Divish Dipoto also admitted that they needed to adjust their messaging with their overall hitting philosophy, as well as their lack of success in evaluating free agent position players. We take a look at the first half of that. It's exactly what you said. It's exactly what I said. Like, Edgar, he's the man. He did it. Somehow he got this team to hit the baseball. You need to bring him back in whatever capacity that you can. The second half of that quote leads into the one that was in Daniel Kramer's article today, which, Colton, kind of put you in the blender earlier today. But this is a quote from Dipoto. We learned where we may be doing things the wrong way, and we have to make adjustments. Not just an approach on the field, but in how we put the roster together, and maybe in some of the things we're looking for, and then how those things fit in our ballpark. Kramer goes on to say, to be sure, Dipoto said that the club will seek proven reinforcements to add to the lineup this offseason, but he also suggested that most of the position player nucleus will remain intact. Another quote from Dipoto, we've always believed in the foundation of this team. Obviously, we need to improve in some areas, and we'll take a look at that as we get into the offseason, but the group here, the group that has come through and formed our foundation, our position player group, there's a lot there. Close quote. Colton, there's a lot there.
That's a lot there.
There's a lot there. It is what it is. We're win it all. 50. How are you feeling about that?
So the way that I feel about it, Joe, is it's not inherently wrong.
Exactly.
Like,
which is hard to like. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Just like the 54% comment, not inherently wrong, but maybe it's just something you don't say. You know, like, again, if you are talking about the core nucleus of this team offensively, it's the outfield, it's Cal Raleigh. Like, it's those, 4 or 5 guys, maybe JP Crawford, but the important spots that you need to make up for this offseason is probably first base, second base, and third base. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the spots that you have to go out there and make meaningful additions in. And he, like, Dipoto, what he said, could be exactly what that means. Like, yeah, the outfield and Cal Raleigh. Maybe that's what he considers the nucleus of this team. Yeah. And the fact that they are going to be looking for guys who have been there, done that, basically. I mean, obviously Justin Turner fits that bill, and a lot of people are clamoring to bring Turner back, and I think that's fine. We talked about it a little bit on stream. I think bringing Justin Turner back is fine as long as they do more, as long as he's not the guy that they bring in. Like, my worry is that they say, okay, here's Justin Turner. He's your first baseman. Mm-hmm. Like, no, you need to go out and you need to reach out to Christian Walker. You need to reach out to Pete Alonso. And if those guys don't bite, then sure. But you have to explore every avenue. You said it before we started recording. You cannot leave any stone unturned, because this team's offensive prowess in 2024 was downright terrible. Mm-hmm. They sucked. And that can't happen next year. It can't. Again, if the Mariners struggle like this next year, Dipoto's gone, Hollider's gone, like, and maybe that's not inherently a bad thing that those guys are gone, but like, their jobs are staked on this offseason. There's never been, and I say this every single year, bro, there's never been a more important offseason than the one that is right in front of us. Mm-hmm. And I say that every year, bro. But like, I think that the Mariners are the core nucleus, like he says, it's in a good spot with Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, Victor Robles, Randy Rosarena, Luke Raley. Like, those guys specifically, I think, are locks to stay on the offensive side of things. I personally, and I know that Ty agrees with this, I think you might even agree with it, JP Crawford should not be a lock next year going into 2025. I think that if JP is the starting guy next year, okay. But you have to call Willy Adames. You have to go out there and make the phone calls for guys that could be upgrades, because that's just what your offense needs.
Mm-hmm. I think and kind of like piggybacking off your idea of like, this is the most important offseason, blah, 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 talking about locks. Going into the 2023 offseason and then through that into 2024, we said that JP Crawford was a lock on offense. So like, even though that we're like feeling very comfortable with where the outfield is at, with how Cal is, with Luke Raley, it's baseball, and I know that's a touchy subject. It's just baseball, but like, some guys just might have a down year, and for whatever reason, the Mariners just have had a pattern of finding guys that have a down year, or getting guys in a down year when you really couldn't afford to have that happen. And I think that something that kind of like pulls the Dipoto quote that I just read, something also from Saturday that Jude tweeted. So it's the outfield is set with Julio, Robles, and Rosarena as Dipoto sees it. Mariners will look for upgrades around the infield, but Dipoto says the last 5 weeks have proven the M's are not far off, which it's that same thing of like, we feel good with where they're at. There's a lot there, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's not wrong. It just, when you miss the playoffs for the second year in a row, it doesn't feel right to say it out loud. And I don't think he's getting as much flack as he was last offseason. Like not even close. I get where he's going, and it inspires confidence in me that he has confidence with the players that he brought in, like Randy, Robles, Rayleigh. Like those are guys, and obviously you're pairing that with Cal and Julio. Like it feels good to know that there's some sort of stability when we knew there was going to be a lot of turnover last offseason. There was a lot of instability on that roster. Now we know that there's at least a bit more of a stable foundation that you can kind of depend on and rely on going through this offseason, that like you might not need as like big polarizing moves. And you're talking about like, say, like bringing Justin Turner back. Like I have that same viewpoint that we had when we acquired him at the deadline of like, he should be like the tertiary piece. Right? Like he should not be the first. He's okay as the second piece, but if you get two guys better than him, that automatically makes that move even better because of the depth that you bring in with having a veteran presence, with having a guy that is just a pure hitter through and through. Like a guy that works in Edgar's offense, being Justin Turner makes sense. A pure hitter, a guy that made a living, made it to the Hall of Fame on being a pure hitter. Coaching a guy like Justin Turner who made a living as just being a dude that hits, it just makes sense. And having that to kind of echo throughout the clubhouse as well, I think also can be very valuable. But again, it shouldn't be your primary thing, which I hope that they don't see it that way, given how these comments are kind of framed. But again, it's day one of the offseason. These comments were made not even, it was day zero, day -1 of the offseason. These comments were made because they were eliminated. Because this team, sure, they've proven that they weren't far off, but they were still off. They weren't there. They're not in the playoffs for a reason. And again, we're in day one of the offseason. I'd rather be in the postseason. There's going to be a lot that can happen over the next 5-6 months. You're fine. Leave it. You're fine. The audio listeners are confused. And I just think that like right now it's going to be, like you said, it's an important offseason because you've got guys in-house, but they shouldn't be guaranteed anything for filling out those spots that you do have holes in.
I think that what was interesting to me, this is a little bit off topic here, but it was brought to our attention that the Mariners weren't really planning on doing a postseason presser. Like that was it, because last year, the whole 54% thing, like ever since the 54% thing, they have been very much so tight-lipped compared to how they've been in the past, talking about the inner workings of the clubhouse, of the moves that are being made and whatnot. And then an episode of Locked On Mariners said like they're not going to have this postseason presser, and they were upset about it, rightfully so, because we need to know, we need the state of the Mariners. We have to hear it from the people that are making the decisions, what the plan is moving forward. And then Jerry, impromptu, according to Lyle, like nobody knew about it in the media. They just said, hey, Jerry's going to be here in a couple minutes. He's going to talk, because probably they didn't want a bunch of cameras. They didn't want people to be prepared to ask tough questions. Like they just wanted to have Jerry just come out there, just say what he had to say and be done with it. And that's exactly what it was. So I will be shocked if we do get a postseason presser. It sucks. Because I think that there's still a lot more that needs to be talked about. Especially with the guys that made the decisions to put this team on the field. And what he said, albeit in a very, very short session, it carries a lot of weight for what we're going to see over the next couple of months. And us, as you know, for doing what we do, like it's important that we know the direction of this team and like what the plan is, because then we can make educated guesses on what they might end up doing. So it was good to hear that, you know, at least we can safely assume that the pitchers stay intact, that the outfield stays intact. So all the talk about trading a pitcher or trading Randy is probably unlikely at this point. Because when we first heard about all that, it was chaos.
Yeah.
Like we heard they were going to try to trade Randy. We're like, what the hell, man? We just got this guy and he's been actually kind of good. Or like trading a pitcher. It's like the pitcher's the only reason you're here. So hearing it from the mouth of the guy making the decisions is important. I think that the payroll part of everything, it's like, and I've said this all week, but I just wish that the ownership cared about this team as much as we care about this team. Because if the ownership cared about this team as much as we care about this team, there would be no question on what they're going to do. They'd be going out there, Willy Adames, we're offering you a big contract.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Juan Soto, we're offering you a competitive contract. Like, they're going to do it. And, like, that's what the Phillies will do. Like, the Phillies will go out there and I bet you the Phillies offer Juan Soto a contract.
I mean,
Like,
they're in their window. They have an owner that wants to compete. Like, it makes sense that the teams that are at the top competing every year are actively in, like, at least like getting their toes wet in every market that they can to try and get better.
I highly doubt we hear. So that's the other thing is, like, Dipoto saying, hey, the outfield's set. I mean, we all knew that Soto was never going to happen.
Rip Soto
But it's like,
Mojo.
let us dream, you know? And, like, offering Juan Soto a contract, I think, is something the Mariners should do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if somehow he agrees to sign here, I don't care who you get rid of in that outfield, not named Julio Rodriguez. Like,
I mean,
if you
I'd
have to
say
move
just
somebody,
Soto's just he's a DH at that point. You don't have to
Yeah,
play him in the field. You
true.
can just let him hit.
True.
So
Yeah, because he's not a good fielder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, we got a long, interesting offseason ahead of us, and Jerry Dipoto kind of set us going in an interesting direction here at the end of 2024, Joe. But man, what a weird year it has been. Do you have any closing thoughts you wanna mention about this year?
I do want to say that even though it has been like a pretty like tumultuous season, this has probably been the season that I've had, ironically, like the most fun with, because of like our involvement with the community. Like,
Mhm.
the big thing for us this year was just trying to build out the community as much as we can, being more involved, be more interactive, and going live every Sunday, pretty much every Sunday. And then most often than not, after the majority of wins during the regular season, we were able to actively engage with a ton of the people in the community. And yes, largely this season will have some sort of stain in my brain, but being able to really bridge the gap between us and the community is something that I will be forever proud of for this season specifically. So if there's like a silver lining, I want to take that and just like really like make sure that people know that, like, yeah, I like this season I didn't have, like, I wish it went better, but like I have them to thank for making it better, even though it wasn't a great season.
Yeah, we had goals coming into the season, and our biggest one was building a real community where everyone can come in and talk about the Seattle Mariners and honestly just have a good time. And selfishly, I think we did that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we were able to bring together a bunch of people. I talked about it in stream, but I recognize so many of the names because people just keep coming back, and it's people, they're talking amongst themselves. Like, they're not only talking to us, they're talking to each other. And like, we have the Discord now where people are having conversations all the time, sometimes not civil, but
Sure.
conversations all the time, which is awesome. That's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to build some place where people can literally go and talk. People have become friends, like, from this whole thing. Like there are people that have gone and met each other that had no idea who the other person was prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so cool. And obviously the Mariner Mojo meetups, I mean, getting recognized at games is always so cool, being able to hang out with you guys. So it's been a tough season, but in the end, I mean, what we're doing content wise has been a lot of fun. A lot of the members only videos have been a lot of fun. We've kind of branched out in terms of that. 2025 and like this offseason specifically, we do have some things that we haven't really touched on a whole lot of the stuff we want to accomplish, but you know, MLB Mojo is one that we do want to build out. Just kind of expanding, you know, what we talk about, because we have more to say than just about the Mariners. The Mariners are definitely our main focus, but there's other things to talk about in the baseball world. So that's going to be something that's going to be really exciting. But truly, from the bottom of our hearts, we could not do any of this without you guys, the people that watch these videos. Because if we weren't getting views, why would we keep doing it? And like, frankly, if we didn't have people that, what for better or for worse, they're saying nice things or not nice things, like they're in our comments starting a conversation, it's so important. And it has been so much fun throughout a season that has honestly taken a lot out of me personally, one that has affected me quite a bit. But yeah, it's been a really fun season. You know, I was watching, like, they had the highlights of the season going on before the game, and it was like, man, that feels like a millennia ago. Like it feels like so long ago that I was like sitting in Peoria,
Mhm.
like at a couple of the games. Like, dude, that feels like lifetimes ago. So the fact that we're sitting here now at the end of the season, so much time has passed, so much has changed, but a lot is still the same. You know, we're still making the same content. We're still busting out videos. We're going to be able to start making videos about roster construction, which is always quite fun. We're still going to be doing the 2 podcasts a week for the Mariner Mojo channel, as far as I know. And so yeah, we got an interesting offseason ahead of us, Joe. But that's gonna do it from us here on episode 126 of the Hit It Here podcast, presented by Bet Online, the Joe Lacey episode of the podcast. Joe, I would not want to do this with anybody else, and I appreciate you editing all these and just being my absolute best friend. There's literally nobody else I would rather do something like this with. And you know, we wouldn't be here without you. So I appreciate you for everything that you do, and go Mariners.
This bitch didn't let me get a Colton Swanson episode in. This is crazy. Thanks, Colty.
Owned.